The Pittsburgh Steelers got utterly destroyed by the Cincinnati Bengals 41-10 in Cincinnati, sending the Steelers back down to 5-5-1, directly at 500 in an odd game season. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. All the things that went wrong with this game, all the things that are wrong with this team will be discussed in this episode as Steelers fans have a rough Monday and rough week ahead of them before facing the Baltimore Ravens next week. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, please. And as well as if you're listening to on Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review with a positive comment, and you get a special shout out at the end of the show. Steelers fans, first of all, thanks for tuning in on this terrible Monday for you. This has been a rough weekend. Rough couple weeks, actually. Rough few weeks here. You tie the winless Lions, the only team to not beat them this season. Then the Chargers win in crazy fashion the week before, and then utterly destroyed by the Cincinnati Bengals, your little brother in the AFC North. That's just a rough go of things. It is now, and this wasn't just some just a rout. Like the first loss against the Bengals was bad, but it was by 14 points. If the offense had just had a better game, there's like maybe they could have been in it. But this was a 31-point butt whooping. This was never standing a chance from the first snap of the game. The Bengals come out and walk right down the field on you. You never show any sign that you can stop the run, even with T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith and Minkah Fitzpatrick all in the fold. And yeah, sure, Joe Hayden was out and Stephon Tuitt and Tyson Lue was out, but who cares at this point? You got to find answers. And the bottom line is they don't have any. Mike Tomlin was asked after the game, will there be personnel changes? And he was kind of like, well, we'll be looking at that, sure. But who are you calling up for real? And this was my point before when people said, oh, the D-line stinks and the D-line stinks this and that. And I was looking at the roster. I'm like, y'all don't understand. Like when you lose 4 defensive linemen, like the Steelers were in the situation on Sunday, who are you going to call up? You can't clone Cam Heyward. And the bottom line is that without those guys, you're in a rough position. And Devin Bush is falling into the shell of himself. I talked about that last week. Each week, he gets progressively worse now. And even when they tried to replace Robert Spillane, he got hurt. And now you're down to a situation where you don't have any other inside linebackers. And anyone who says Buddy Johnson, listen, there's a reason he's not active every week. But the bottom line is the Cincinnati Bengals just kicked the living snot out of the Steelers. It was ugly. And listen, this Steelers team, I figured all year long when I was saying like, hey, this team could be good. And I still think there's a chance that they could turn things around in a couple of weeks or so. But man, the strength of this team had to be its defense. And its defense gave up realistically 31 points in this game. 10 of those points because of the offense. Ben Roethlisberger throwing terrible interceptions. We'll get to him in a bit. But I mean, Joe Mixon rushing 28 times for 185 yards and 2 touchdowns. What are you even doing at that point? Joe Mixon, running through it. It wasn't just Joe Mixon making great plays. The Cincinnati's offensive line dominated the line of scrimmage. And yes, there were sure evidence of holding. There were certainly bad plays, here and there. And there were times they could have gotten some help, but it doesn't matter when you're getting beat by 31 points. And I give credit to guys like Minkah Fitzpatrick and Cam Heyward, who were obviously fighting as much as they could. Minkah gets his first pick of the season. You see Cam Heyward just scrapping, just like he did against Los Angeles. But it's not enough. You need guys who are role players who are going to fill in and help the situation out. I saw at least effort from Joe Schobert out there trying to contribute in some way. But the bottom line is you need guys that are filling in all over the place, and the Steelers aren't in a position where they can consistently stop the run unless they're selling out to do so or coming out in base formations. And then when you do that, you're opening up the pass game. It's wild when you're thinking about that blowout loss. You're thinking, "Oh man, uh, Joe Burrow must have had a day." Joe Burrow only threw for 190 yards and a touchdown and an interception in this game. Like, he wasn't what killed you. It was just the overall ineptitude, the overall hopelessness that the Steelers had in this game. Couldn't stop the run on defense and couldn't get anything going on offense. Defense gives up a quick score, or not as quick score, a drive of score. Ben Roethlisberger comes out, throws a pick that gets returned back into the red zone. The Steelers defense did a great job coming out and just having them 3 and out and kick a field goal after that. But then it takes until garbage time in the fourth quarter for the offense to even get in the end zone. It was a joke, a bad joke. And blame can be pointed everywhere. Whether you want it to be Ben Roethlisberger or Devin Bush or Mike Tomlin or Kevin Cole, just all around. You saw the falling apart of the Steelers in this game. And that's not something that you could have said for years. Here's my thing, and we'll get to this in the second segment a bit about toxicity, because there's been Steelers fans when they lose by 1 point to a team that was actually like not as bad as people make them out to be. People will say, "Oh, this team is falling apart," for years. In 2017 when they lost to the Jaguars, I said that team's a little bit better than y'all think it is, and people were like, "Oh no, this team's falling apart." Then they finished 13-3 that season, and I was like, "Yeah, that team's not falling apart. They just got outplayed in that game." But this is different. This isn't just being outplayed. This is, I'm not sure what the hope is to turn things back around. Because right now, this team needs people to be able to stand up and say, "Hey, we're going to do this better. We're going to do this better." Be the person, "This is on me. I'm going to change this right now." And there are some guys who can do that. I think Minka's in that crew. I think T.J. Watt's in that crew. He obviously wasn't 100% in this game, but when you go out there, you got to be able to make plays. He wasn't making them. Granted, yeah, he was held, but again, you got to make plays. Cam Heyward, he already does that. But the Steelers need other guys to step up and be those key playmakers. Now, there's some guys out there, skill positions. You saw Pat Freiermuth at the end. When he gets a chance to catch the ball, he makes plays. Najee Harris, you saw the Bengals all game. They keyed in on him. They said, "We're going to make you not beat us with him," because we saw how you checked down to him the last time we played you, and force you to beat him with other people. And the Steelers offense couldn't do that. Ben Roethlisberger was just too inconsistent. This was just a top to bottom, old school butt whooping. And Mike Hilton, former Steeler, current Bengal, who had the pick 6 on Ben Roethlisberger, was asked after the game, "You feel like the Bengals have the edge in the rivalry?" He said yes, and no kidding. 3 wins in a row for the Bengals in this rivalry. And yes, sure, the 11 games before that, the Steelers had a win streak of their own. But with the Bengals looking balanced on offense, with young players on both sides of the ball making plays, and the Steelers scrambling to find answers, and your highest paid player is a quarterback who's underperforming this year, that kind of says what the situation of that rivalry is going right now. We got a lot more to talk about. I got a lot of people to rip too. I'm not done. Of course, this is early in the show, but that was just the overall synopsis. We're going to start taking our magnifying glass and looking at some players closer for this game, and not just players, coaches as well. But I want to start with things that I see on the field and things that will go to the culture and the off the field things in the third segment. But first, we got to talk to you guys about DirecTV Stream. DirecTV Stream. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows. Then you're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friends log in for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We thank you for making us your first listen every day here, as we are free and available on all podcasting platforms, as are all our shows on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, back to this loss and back to pointing fingers and stuff. Now, I look around and I always try to give a holistic view of what's going on and who did what wrong and who did what wrong in the most important situations. Well, when you lose by 31, it's not it's a lot harder to point to one spot or two spots because there's about 20. But I want to start by looking at Chase Claypool for a second. Not for lack of production. He caught 3 passes for 82 yards. Yay. But for the way that he showed himself in the fourth quarter of this game. Now I get it. Tensions are high. You're frustrated, you're losing, whatever. But late in the game, I believe he got his second catch going up for it in traffic. And it was an impressive catch, a big catch. And, it got yards down the field. But Chase Claypool, immediately after the catch, looks right at the man who was covering him and starts talking smack. And the guy's going back and forth with him, and then he goes back and forth with that guy. And I'm sitting there thinking, buddy, what are you doing? You're down at that point. I believe they were down by 28. What are you saying at this point? Now I get it. It's a person talks trash, you got to respond. But you give them a look, or you just walk away. Something. But you don't got time to be talking smack to nobody. You get back to your huddle. You focus on what you got to do better the next play. And then you add on the exclamation point of on a play, he grabs his opponent by the face mask and throws him to the ground, and then keeps running like nothing happened. That to me was a punk move. And the Bengals did a good job of restraining the player who got thrown to the ground. His name escapes me at the moment, but because that was a Bush League move. That was classless. That was non-Steeler like. The Steelers have been in the team of class. Again, the last time these two teams met in the playoffs, you remember the Bengals were the team jumping up and down and hitting referees and hitting people late and diving at people's heads and trying to stomp on people's feet after plays were over. Well, Chase Claypool looked just like that. Now, I will say this. That was a situation where the entire Bengals were like that. This was one player. You didn't see Heyward or T.J. Watt doing those type of things. You just saw Chase Claypool, but he's got to get his act together. He ain't good enough to act bratty. If he was playing like Antonio Brown, even then it would still be talked about in an issue, but at least you could say, well, you know what? That guy is like the best receiver in football. This guy ain't even the best receiver on his team. That's Deontay Johnson, who, by the way, actually, I think is one of those guys that you can look at moving forward. 9 catches, 95 yards, was fighting to the very end. We'll get into that fight in the third segment. But Chase Claypool, be better. Not just on the field as a player, but on the field as a sportsman, on the field as a classy individual, and off the field as a classy individual. But it ain't just on Chase, of course. That was just one thing that teed me off in the fourth quarter. That was just like, man, that's, it's one thing to lose bad and to just not be good, but then to not carry yourself with class when that happens, that's an issue, especially when you wear a Steelers uniform. Now, for other guys, Ben Roethlisberger, I said last week, maybe he found something. Maybe there was something there. Yeah, forget all that. Throw that in the trash. That's gone. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions against the Chargers. Who cares at this point? And comes out. The first interception, I get that some people could say, oh, miscommunication. Oh, Claypool ran the wrong route. I'm sorry. But you know how many times I've heard that excuse over Ben Roethlisberger's career? I heard that the best receiver in football for 6 years, Antonio Brown, was running wrong routes while he was wide open down the field. I maybe in that one circumstance it was, but it's been a long heard excuse for bad throws when there was plenty of time for Ben Roethlisberger to see on that play that Chase Claypool had beaten his man, had nobody in front of him, and if he just leads him down the field with Chase Claypool's speed, he probably has a touchdown. That was a mistake by Ben Roethlisberger. And maybe the route was something he thought shouldn't have happened. Maybe it should have been back shoulder, but there was more than enough time to say, oh, hey, to wait a second. There's no safety there. Let me lead Claypool down the field instead of throwing it back shoulder where the cornerback has already been beaten. And he's like, oh, thank you for throwing it behind him because there was no way I was going to stop him over the top. That was a mistake. And then, of course, the pick six to Mike Hilton. I mean, what are you even doing in that situation? There's 37 seconds left, 3 timeouts. You need to get up the field after your defense just got an interception. Minkah Fitzpatrick trying to give you a last gasp of hope. And then you throw it where Mike Hilton is sitting all over the play and him getting a pick six. And congratulations to Mike Hilton. I mean, this has to be a career moment for him. The Steelers don't pay him. He obviously is like, I deserve better. He goes to the Bengals. He's gotten better. He got paid, and now he's on a team that's winning and fighting atop the AFC. Congratulations to him. But, man, that was embarrassing. And when that happened, I was like, man, this isn't just salt in the wound. It's lemon juice in the wound. It's acid in the wound. It's a bullet in the wound. It's like, forget all those things. It's just another bullet in the wound. It's just like, bang, you know what? This is just what it is. But the Steelers, I mean, this is just the epitome of all the bad things coming to fruition for you. You can't run the ball because your offensive line's getting pushed around. You can't throw the ball because your quarterback's not making the right reads. You can't stop the run because your defense is too hurt up front and the guys who are behind them aren't tough enough to be able to fight through those injuries. You can't stop the pass. Well, actually, I'll take that back. Again, they gave it less than 200 yards to the air. The pass defense, I'm not as mad at. Though James Pierre, the touchdown that he gave up, kind of showed why I've been like, hey, be excited for James Pierre as a developing player, but I'm not trying to, hop on the hype train all the way. You know what I'm saying? Because that was a play where he was well in position. He got inside of his man. He lined everything up, and then he just had no idea what he was doing when the ball was in the air. And I think that's where James Pierre is. And I know we're making fun of Tony and Tony Serino, who's been on the show all the time. He's started the James Pierre hype train back in March. And this is what you like about James Pierre. He fights to get into the right position. He has the football smarts there, but when the instincts and the ball is in the air, that's been lacking, and that's going to happen. But again, I'm not crushing James Pierre for this. That was one play. He had another really bad play where he missed Joe Mixon on a tackle. He's a second-year undrafted cornerback out there fighting on a team that's scrapping and is down 31 points. I'm not going to crush him for this. But who I will crush is the overall plan for this organization. Now, I do think this needs to be tempered because it's not as simple as some people are making it out to be when they talk about, oh, the Steelers, this is on the coaches and the front office. And yes, it is. When anytime they lose, you can say, yes, it's on them for not putting the team together. But there's a smarter way to say that than just the same old fire Tomlin quotes that I see on Twitter, which have happened for the past 10 years in Steelers Twitter. No, excuse me, 15 years. Ever since he was hired, I've seen these things. Even when it was like his third or fourth game as a Steeler coach, and they lost the game, and I've seen that tweeted out, or I've seen that said among Steelers fans. But there are realistic ways to approach this and to look at this and say, hey, these are the things that are coming to fruition from decisions that were made into building this team the way it is. We'll get to those in just a minute here, right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, I got to tell you guys about Built Bar. It's here, the best Monday of the year, Cyber Monday. And Built.com is the place to aim your mouse. Get at least 20% off everything delicious and healthy. That's 20% off the site wide at Built.com. And even bigger discounts on Built Boost, Broth, and Built Swag. There's a brand new Built Bar flavor just landed in time for Cyber Monday called Caramel Almond Delight. And it delivers everything it promises. Caramelized chocolate, check. Almonds, check. Delightful, double check. Be sure to get yours before they're gone. They're 150 calories and they pack 17 grams of protein. This season, maybe you're craving for something for white chocolate. For a limited time, get a special new Built Puffs flavor, white chocolate cheesecake. Yummy protein treat filled with marshmallowy center, covered in white chocolate. Also, just 140 calories, but packing 17 grams of protein. 'Tis the season to save and give you and your taste buds the gift of Built Bar. Get to Built.com for these incredible tasting new bars and 20% off everything. Head to Built.com and enter code LOCKED20. That's LOCKED20. Locked 20, all capital letters, all one word, before it's too late And of course, we got Bet Online. Thanksgiving may be over, but your chance to make money is not, as long as you go to betonline.ag. We all know what this means. Yes, football is still in the air, basketball is well underway, but BetOnline has you covered all through holiday season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this Thanksgiving. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus with promo code Locked On to receive your welcome bonus. It's not just football, though. BetOnline has pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, and even your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season at BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where we're stuffed with deals for Thanksgiving. Now, of course, when we do double ad reads, that means we keep it rolling. It's tough to keep it rolling because the Steelers ain't rolling nothing right now. After not losing a game for, I think, 6 weeks with the bye week and the tie and the 4 wins, the Steelers have now, lost 2 games in a row, not won for 3 straight weeks. Not good. It's looking rough. And you have to see a lot of the nightmare scenarios. Every team has nightmare scenarios. With even the great teams, there's just situations where, hey, if this guy gets hurt and this guy gets hurt, you're in trouble. Or if this guy underperforms on this guy, you're in trouble. The Steelers are experiencing that right now. And to be fair, I think that they've experienced this before. The beginning of the 2013 season was when they started 0-4. I mean, there was looking like no hope. They were looking like, hey, maybe they're the team that, that's going to end up with a top 5 pick that year. And they found a way to salvage to 8-8. Now, and I think it's also funny because they tied the Lions. 8-8 is actually a possibility this year in a game with 17 games. That is insane to me, and it would be the ultimate troll job ever if the Steelers were able to get we're able to get back to 8-8-1 on a year where everyone thought, well, that's not possible to get 8-8 anymore. They found a way. But anyways, this goes back to the organization of this team. Now, I deal with these comments every week. The fire Mike Tomlins, and this is where the toxicity of fandom comes into play. This is where I see people taking things way too far. When the Steelers lose by 3 points to the Bills with Josh Allen when he's playing well, and they're playing with Duck Hodges, and they're saying, "Oh, Mike Tomlin should be fired for that." I'm like, okay, you're just saying that every week. And there's times to criticize Mike Tomlin, and Kevin Colbert, like you looking at this roster. There's about $9.5 million in cap space, and this team didn't invest to get more help on the defensive line, more help on the offensive line. And there's help needed there. And right now, this team needs assistance in those areas, and they're not getting them because they don't have them on the roster. And it's too late to trade for anybody. The trade deadline's passed. It's too late to sign anybody. All the good free agents were signed away. You're lying in the bed that you've made for yourself, a Tomlinism that he's used for years. And another thing I'll say, when people after every loss, I see people complain like, oh, he's just saying the same thing as before. You have to understand, Mike Tomlin's not trying to make you feel better. He's answering questions in a format that he's trying to not get on the news for saying anything crazy, because then he becomes a distraction to his team. The real work that he has to do is getting back to his team and getting things to turn around, which he didn't do this week, obviously, and he's admitted that as much. But the real deal here is that this was a team that banked on, hey, Ben Roethlisberger is going to be better. And even though Ben Roethlisberger took a pay cut to stay with the Steelers, he still costs almost $26 million against their salary cap, the highest salary cap number on this team. And right now, there's been times where he's been a good game manager in some of their wins, but there's been no win where I've said, man, they won specifically because of Ben Roethlisberger. There's never been a game where I've said that this year. They've won with him helping, but the driving forces has either been T.J. Watt or Cam Heyward or Najee Harris or Pat Freiermuth making a catch that he shouldn't have made. There's been all sorts of other guys, but Ben Roethlisberger has been more of a passenger this year. And I thought that was part of the plan. You had to make him a passenger, but you needed to be able to add more around him. And with his current salary cap situation, you just can't. And now you're in a situation where the offensive line, they're young and they're getting overwhelmed. But I won't put this game all on them. And Ben Roethlisberger said, I'm not going to point the finger at the offensive line. After the game, he said that. I think it's part of the reason there. But again, you came into the season knowing that they were going to be underachieving. This wasn't going to be the strong point of the team. You hope that they could find some growing points, and there were times that they did grow. I mean, you saw the way that they played against the Browns at midseason. You saw some of the games early this season. There were times where, hey, Kendrick Green, there's some promise there. Kevin Dotson, there's some promise there. Trey Turner, he's looking like a vet. Chukuma Okorafor had some really up games. Dan Moore Jr. looked not exposed in some games, but all of that has come crashing down in a group that has to find, what younger players, they're not going to be as consistent. This is just what happens when that occurs. And this is where you could come at Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert. This is what you get when you create a situation where you say, hey, we're sticking with the old quarterback and we're believing him, and now you got to lie down with it. But here's my response to, I'm saying this is a problem. This is a problem. They needed to address the defensive line's depth a little bit more, though I will say, actually, no, I take that back. No team can predict that you're going to be down 4 guys to a single position, which is where the Steelers are right now. With Stephon Tuitt, Tyson Alualu, Carlos Davis, and Isaiah Buggs were all unavailable for this game. And yes, Tuitt and Alualu we've known about, but bottom line is you invested going into this season to have the defensive line be the stoutest part of your team, and now it's one of the weaker parts of your team because it's been ravaged by injury. No team can plan for that. I mean, heck, look at the Chiefs offense in the Super Bowl. They built a whole offense that was arguably the best offense in the NFL over the past 4 years, and it was taken apart because their offensive tackle situation just crumbled. Is that being that Andy Reid stinks as a head coach? No, it means that was a tough situation for anybody to overcome against a team like the Buccaneers, who rushed the passer well, stopped the run well, and were making life a nightmare for Patrick Mahomes in that Super Bowl. It's the same thing with the Steelers' defensive line. When Cam Heyward's your only asset and you're hoping that Chris Wormley can hold up for the most of the game, and then you're bringing in Henry Mondo had to start, man. Henry Mondo had to start. That's where you're at right now. But again, you can criticize the Steelers for saying, hey, why didn't you use more of that free agent space to go get some vets? But again, I'll say the defensive line, with all the injuries, that's tough to predict. But the offensive line, that's not the case. You knew who you were getting this year. The Zach Banner situation still baffles me. I don't understand. If he's not healthy, why is he going in there as the extra eligible lineman at times? He should be out there. I've seen enough of Dan Moore Jr. Now, granted, maybe it's because Zach Banner can't play left tackle well enough, and maybe you're scared to move Chukuma Okorafor from right tackle to left tackle, but you need something, man. And that's where I see this team. And it's like, hey, you know what? This is the bed that you lie in. You thought Ben Roethlisberger would be able to carry you. You thought the offensive line would be able to, he would be good enough to overcome the offensive line, and now it's just become a entire mess, just falling apart in key parts of the year. This is a game, and I said this last week. They needed to win this game for a shot to win the AFC North. I now believe that's out of reach. Now, I said they didn't need this win to make the playoffs, because at 5-1, I think they're a game back of the teams that are in the seventh seed or hunting for the 7th seed. The AFC is just all too crowded for that to be the case. If they get on a run, who knows what can happen here. And for anyone who's like, well, how are they going to ever get on a run? I encourage you to look at some other teams around the NFL and see how they're playing when we all buried them earlier in the season, like this Indianapolis Colts, who almost took down the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But again, this boils down to the plan of that. Now, here's where I differ from people who look at, man, you didn't invest in the offensive line. You didn't invest. You brought back your quarterback. You made this bed. You got to line it. Yes, I agree there. But the people who are saying, oh, yeah, Tomlin's done, we get it. Those are the same people that have been saying Tomlin's done for 15 years since he first got there. You didn't want him there in the first place. That's fine. You be who you want to be. I don't think Mike Tomlin is the overarching problem of this team. He never has been. And he gets blamed for an inordinate amount of things. Are there things that he does get blamed for? Yes, but you can't even address those, because then he's getting blamed for having to play a 5th-string running back who fumbles in a key playoff game. And it's like, oh, that's all on Mike Tomlin. And I'm like, well, how? How is he going to fix that situation? That's where I'm at. But this game, this is on him. This is on the Steelers front office. They prepared this way. And that's where I'm at with this. But I will not heap that on to saying, like, oh, this adds to a long laundry list of just big problems for Mike Tomlin. That's not the case. You ask again, I bring on hosts every week here from other teams' podcasts on Crossover Thursdays, and I've never heard one opposing host say anything bad about Mike Tomlin. In fact, most people are like, man, yeah, please fire him to get him out of here so that the Steelers can fall apart a lot faster. and that said maybe we can get him. I mean, I had one of the Texans guys. He wasn't even on my show, and he tweeted at me, "Hey, if Mike Tomlin's really thinking about leaving, can he come to Houston, please?" Everyone wants them a piece of Mike Tomlin. I don't think that just firing him is the answer here, because also I say look at other teams that have done that type of thing. The Giants with Tom Coughlin fired a guy that had brought them their only 2 Super Bowls since the Phil Simms days of the NFL, and look where they've fallen. They're irrelevant. They're a joke. And if you want the Steelers to fall to be there, and people think like, oh, they are a joke right now. I'm like, listen, buddy, this is where you're spoiled as a Steelers fan. At 5-5-1, there's a lot of teams that are really bad right now who would say, man, we take 5-5-1. We take going 12-4 last year. There's a lot of organizations that would take the Steelers last 10 years over theirs. And that's where I'm like, okay, you got to relax when it comes to saying the Steelers are this bad or this terrible. Is this a new low for the Steelers? Yes. And this is the worst loss of the Mike Tomlin tenure. Absolutely. But I'm not sitting here saying, oh, because of this one loss, I'm going to fire this guy who became the 4th fastest coach in NFL history to get to 150 wins. And I'm going to say, hey, you know what? This guy has dug this team out of really bad spots time and time again over 15 years. If this is finally the first time in 15 years that he can't dig them out of a bad spot, okay, that happened one time. But again, I'd say that if that happens, if you have one bad year out of 15, I'll take that ratio easily in the NFL anytime. And also, the season is not over. They've got 6 games left. We'll see how they play. They do have a rough schedule ahead. We've got more coming your way this week, more in the Locked On Steelers podcast. Of course, we'll have new guests coming in, talking everything on your Pittsburgh Steelers, helping you get through the week. Hang in there, Steelers fans. I know it's not a proud day to walk with your heads high and wear your Steelers jersey at work on a Monday, but hang in there. We'll be keeping you posted on what happens with the Steelers. Of course, Mike Tomlin will talk Tuesday. We'll see what that. I was not in Cincinnati for this one. I am here in Pittsburgh. I will be on the Channel 11s with WPXI's The Final Word, breaking down the game afterwards at around like 11 o'clock ish after Sunday Night Football. So if you're in Pittsburgh and you've already seen this on Sunday night because we aired this a little early, do tune in for that. It's going to be a fun show. As always, you can follow me, Chris Carter, on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. You can listen to or watch this show on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey. Please hit the like button if you're watching this on YouTube, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to all of our stations here for the Locked On Steelers podcast. And if you leave us a 5-star review with a positive comment on Apple, we get you a shout out at the end of the show. Thanks again for listening. We hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving weekend outside of that rough Steelers Sunday. We're back in your ears and on your screens on Tuesday.